Hello and welcome to another episode of Throttle Stop Garage. In today's episode, we're going to have a look at how we make stainless steel trim for our project car. Stay tuned. Okay, continuing the theme of stupid little projects that'll keep you from finishing your project car, we're going to have a look today at how we can make stainless steel trim. Now, I know that trim is available for my car. Volvo still makes it, so I'm building a Volvo Canadian. Check in the channel. I've had this car for a million years, and apparently I've been working on it for about as long. Anyway, I know I can buy the trim from Volvo. I just don't like it. I have made most of the panels for this car in carbon fiber, and I know that the stock trim, actually, when you bolt it down, is going to put quite a lot of stress on those panels, so I need a piece of trim that fits perfectly. By the way, t-shirts available in the Teespring store. Help us out. So in today's video, we're going to have a look at creating a hammer form to build that trim part. All right, so we've got a little bit of wood, we've got some metal, we've got some other techniques that we're going to try out. But the missing piece for the whole thing, I don't actually have the trim. I know. It's in my garage somewhere. And if you've watched the channel long enough, I looked high and low, I couldn't find it. But a good friend of mine took some photos. Right, he's got some dimension photographs for me, so I'm going to work straight from a dimension photograph and we're going to create the part from there. All right, let's get after it.
Full disclosure, I'm pretty sure I checked every single box in the house, in the shed, in the garage, and there's no chance of me finding that. Anyway, first step, get the front of that hood taped off. That is the carbon fiber hood, so we don't want to mark or damage that. And then I'm just going from my phone, you can see, I'm checking out the photos and just marking in the dimensions and trying to figure out exactly where things are supposed to be. Then we pull a profile and we're going to start this process.
All right, so we've laid out the pattern again, just covered the hood with tape initially. And then I only have photos, right? I have some detailed photos that a friend sent me of all the pattern, the widths, the various dimensions that I think I need. So now I've got the start and the stop, right, of the hood piece lined up. We've taken our profile gauge. All right, so taking the profile gauge, I've got a rough profile of the hood. I'm going to transfer that onto some cardboard, and then I'm going to draw the upper profile. And I'm just going to doodle it in, right? So we'll get that done. Then you can see I've got the profile gauge sitting on actually just a hunk of wood. This is, I'm not even too sure what it is. I think it was locally cut. There's a long story behind half of the wood in my garage. This is probably elm or something. It doesn't matter. It's waste. It's just sitting in my rafters. So I'm going to transfer it onto that and then whittle and carve it away until I've got the shape. And from that shape, we will go over and then start committing it into stainless steel. So far so good. It's what, 5 minutes worth of work, so no big deal. So we'll get these patterns cut out, we'll make sure everything fits perfectly. The biggest problem again with the hood is the crown of the hood. All right, so it's not through the area where the hood piece sits, where this nose part sits. The hood's got pretty significant crown.
So that just means a solid surface is not going to be able to sit up against the hood without, damaging or impacting it. So this is the start of developing the cardboard. Quickly cut it out and then start to shape it kind of the way everyone does it. I'm putting a few index marks on it so I know exactly where that cardboard goes. And then if you've not seen these before, the blocks that I'm using are a carbide permagrit block, and they're absolutely brilliant for sanding cardboard and foam and other things. They just work great. So just a few minutes worth of work to get that pattern done. So that's going to be the hood surface, and then I'm back to the photograph. So when my phone comes out throughout the video, I just try to figure it out. I've got a couple of heights and other things, so I've added some reference marks in, and the rest just a doodle. It's about the best you can do. I got these electric scissors because Ray Shaleen on his channel says that they work good in cardboard, and boy do they ever. They just slice through cardboard without any problem at all. So I'm tidying that pattern up, and that will help me get all of basically everything else that I have to do with it is going to be based on that pattern. Right. Then into the wood. So we get the old jigsaw out and start hacking up the dead tree carcasses here. So we'll get this modeled up. It's so much fun to be able to do this kind of stuff. This was just a fun Saturday. So just, again, knocking off any of the other bits and pieces. Then we're going to move over to the scary machine. Here we go. So at first, I'm just trying to make it flat because that's a rough sawn piece. So it's not been passed through a planer or anything. And you can see with the 50 grit belt, if you just touch it, it disappears. So you have to be real careful. Almost went a little too far. Got away from me. 50 grit sandpaper gets away from you quickly. It's okay, that's the shape it has to be anyway. So let's mark out the inside now.
All right, so now with the hood piece sort of roughed in, again, I've had to just gently carve away a little bit on the underside to give myself relief for the peak of the hood. So now it fits pretty well. A little bit of refinement left to go on the part, but it's now kind of down and tight, and actually this is going to fit better already than the stock part or the stock parts that I've seen, which just never tend to fit very well. And again, one of the reasons for making it is we don't have the option with a carbon fiber hood of just sort of bolting things down and having things move and press. This carbon fiber is not going anywhere, so the piece either fits or it'll look like garbage. All right, so what I need to do now is establish a center line for the hood. So I'm just going to use the 3 mount points. Furnace, of course, has to start right now. I'm just going to use the 3 mount points here and a little bit of inexpensive fine line tape, and I can pull from this a nice center line right there, and then I can get symmetry out of the part. Again, the idea behind making the wooden template is just to give me a full relief buck to make the stainless steel part from.
Right now, with the bottom half center line drawn in, I'm taking and getting some dimensions again from that drawing and just looking at the overhead shots and sort of pulling some widths. And then you're going to watch me just sketch it in. That's kind of what it looks like. And then mostly the rest of it is about trying to get this thing to be symmetrical. Easiest way to do straight lines is just to use the tape. So the tape goes in to draw the straight lines to where I sort of think those are supposed to go. And a lot of this is, you know, clearly we're never going to be sitting at a concourse event and have somebody go by and tell me that my hood trim's not quite right. And hey, maybe you're missing parts off your car too, and this is probably maybe the craziest way to build them, but I think we'll be able to get it done. And back to the sanding machine of doom, which just, I mean, absolutely vaporizes wood. Like, it is meant for metal, so the wood doesn't really present much of a challenge for it. It's a scary machine. All right, so roughly shape it there, and then go over to the smaller one on the bench as soon as I figure I'm getting a little bit too close for comfort. Now, that's 1/4 inch fine line tape. It's orange in this case, so I'll lay a nice straight line down the top, again, just to draft in the lines. And then we're looking for symmetry. So how many millimeters on either side of that orange line? That's what it's all about. And then it's over to the more gentle wheel. I get rough shaping in and some more finish style sanding before I go ahead and start working all this stuff out by hand. So you try to get this sort of rough volume of the wood pulled off as quick as you can. Let's not spend all day. Actually, this only took me just just a part of a day to do. So for anyone that thinks this took a week or something, I was maybe a couple hours at it, and I just remember the passage of time being quite nice when I was doing this work. It was a lot of fun, actually. Almost there, almost.
Okay, so with just a little bit of sanding, we're now pretty good. Again, this is just sort of like a full surface buck, so I can get an idea of various shapes and things that it's supposed to be. The top of it, everything has to come down a little bit yet. Again, I've got to put the radius across the top, and the whole piece just has to be a little bit lower. I was working especially on the symmetry side to side, right, to try to get this shape. It's sort of an elongated teardrop, I guess you could call it. I was trying to get that right. I think we're pretty close now by eye. I don't want to go too crazy on the measurement of it. It doesn't matter because this isn't the part. This is the buck for the part. But the more accurately you make this buck, the better the part is that you can make. And I haven't even formalized in my mind the final way to make the part, but let's get it finished up first. At least it's educating my hands a little bit in terms of the shape, which is important. A lot easier to do this in wood than it is to do it in steel. And working at it just one element at a time, that's the way that I normally would develop a three-dimensional part, is develop each one of the sort of roughly 2D surfaces at a time, and then start doing that sculpting so that the kind of grow shape development is done, and then you can work on each part independently and not try to sort of grab for too much at once. So the orange 1/4 inch tape can now come off because we're really consistent across the top. I'll then sand this back just a little bit to get it to the eventual height, which is a little lower, a little bit more elegant. And then we'll apply the radius. All right, so with that, let's get back to getting the work done. Okay, so with the trim part made, we're happy with this wooden part. Again, this is just going to be a wooden buck. So it's a solid surface buck to help me understand what the shape should look like. I was working only from photographs for this part and a few measured areas. So I had a couple of measurements along the width that I knew I had to hit. I had a measurement for the start point and a measurement for the stop point. Everything else is just by eye. Is going to be close enough for this particular part. And crafting it out of wood also will help me, well, it did help me understand a little better about the nature of the shape, just how it should flow and curve. I find that a lot, especially with older cars, they were made by people. So, you know, when you fair a curve and you sort of smooth it out, you learn what's sort of right to the feel and to the eye, because it was right for the person that made it initially. So that really helps you understand how the part works. So I'm going to try to hammer form this. So again, if we have a look, we can kind of visualize what's going to happen. If I took and say put it in my bead roller and bent this line, right, just went and tried to tip this edge, what'll happen is this line that I just drew is shorter than the line on the top, which we're bending to, and they have to match in terms of, so for this to be turned to a 90-ish degree or even rolled over into a radius, which is what we'd need for here, right, we would have to have these two lines match in terms of their length. So we'd have to shrink this metal here. Now that's not going to be easy to do on a trim piece because the shrinker and stretcher will leave marks on the sheet metal. And I'm, you know, as a trim piece, I just sort of don't want any marks on it. It has to be polished. It's got to look good. So the other way to do it is by hammer forming. So we can take
the pattern, cut out a shape from steel, clamp the metal down, and then perform the entire operation through stretching. Right? So in this case, you'll take, instead of trying to get the top line, this outside area, or outside distance to match the inside distance, you're going to stretch the inside to match the outside. It's the same thing, right? In sheet metal, there's always at least 2 or 3 ways to do everything. So I'm going to make just one half. In order to complete this, we're going to do it in 2 halves, right? And then I'll just weld down the middle. Should be easy enough to do. We're making the hammer form out of this 3/8 plate, so 10 millimeter plate, because it's about the right thickness and it is the correct radius. So I'm going to take the wooden part, I'm going to wax it with release wax. So just my same ordinary release wax for those that join me for the carbon fiber adventures. So we're going to cover it with release wax. And then I went down to the Princess Auto, and they had Bondo hair, which is just a long strand body filler. I had it on for half price. I wasn't planning on using that, but it'll work good. So it's good, strong material. And I'm just going to use that to fill the radius, just to fill this little radius that's going to be left over on the steel plate once we've got our area carved out in it. I'll set, the wooden part will then get set into a bed of this, right? So it'll be sitting down for most of the area, but it'll then allow it to sculpt and contour to the bottom. So it'll be 2 layers of steel with this sitting on top of it into that corner. Again, you'll see it, it'll explain itself better than I'll do it. Well, I'll give it a shot at explaining it anyway. You can see here I'm trying to work out all the details from the pattern. So I'm using that original template. That gets me, now that I'd already cut the other half out of it, it gets me the rough profile. And then it's over to the metal cutting saw and try to get around this. Now, I gotta tell you, I only left this footage in because look at that. I mean, does it get any better than that? Like, I just managed to clear, like the angle was right. That the way that the saw cuts, it cuts at an angle, and that just managed to allow that 3/8 plate to slide by. And that did make this go a lot more quickly than it normally would. And I didn't want to, I mean, it's at the limit where my plasma could cut it. My oxyacetylene setup will get through this no problem, but leave me with quite a lot of work. And then, you know, I like playing with the files. So I sat in with the file for like stupid amounts of time. No reason. There's no reason. I mean, I'm going to put body filler on this. I'm fully aware. It's just, I guess that day on a Saturday, I decided I really needed to waste some time. Okay, so now on to the hammer form. Now I've got some 3/4 inch MDF, so that's 20 mil. And I hate working with MDF. So if you wondered why I don't always use it, it's dirty and nasty and I don't like it. So this is the bottom plate, and I'm just sluking on a little bit of 5-minute epoxy here. The steel's nice and clean. Set it in place, clamp it down. That's done. Wait for a few minutes. And then you know what? I didn't even go with the steel. I went straight for the stainless because I'm a bit of a masochist. So I'm like, I think it'll work. I had a little offcut there, so I'm like, it'll be fine. It's 22 gauge stainless steel, by the way. And I'm like, yeah, close enough. It'll work. So then the hair comes out. Again, it's kind of horrible stuff to work with if you've never done it before. It doesn't want to spread because it's a long strand filler. You can pretty effectively deal with it. So I like to try to get things in as smoothly as I can. You do have time. I'm only working on a small piece. I'm not doing a hole in a fender or something. And don't do that. Like, fix things properly. But in this instance, a good use for it. And then I'm going to go in and clean off as much of it as I can because it's going to save me sanding later. Like, everything is about trying to limit work to where it makes sense. And then I don't know if I capture it, but I gave it kind of one last push just to make sure it was smooshed in there real nice. And then walk away from it for a few hours, make sure it's fully set up, and away we go. There we go. That wood's got some flex to it, which is good. I sort of need that. And there. Nice. All right. Well, the mold surface is got a little bit of work.
All right, everything's had enough time to harden, including the filler just left on the thing. So if you're in the habit of cleaning this off, stop doing that. Let it harden up in a blob, break it off, and it's pretty much clean. So top tip, I suppose, for body filler newbies. Okay, so I've just added a little bit of the short strand body filler to the dye, and then we're just going to take the texture off it with a little bit of sandpaper. Totally unnecessary, but I did need to fix up this area right here at the front. And then we're going to run our first test pieces through here. Got a couple of different tools to try to see how it's going to work. The first one is an aircraft riveter. This is one that I bought a million years ago off eBay, and then the tool I made myself. So the tool is just a simple, cheap air hammer. I think this one was just a straight chisel. I got it for a few dollars. I cut the tip off, and then I found a 15/16 socket that fit the Delrin that I had with just a little bit of modification so that the Delrin fits in like a little overly tight. And then I've got, so then the Delrin fits in here nicely, and then that's just the shape it's taken over the years as I've used this as my primary method of hammer forming steel. I've never tried stainless before, so we're going to see how the die works. I may want to just round this over a little bit more. No harm, no foul with this. You just take it over to the sander, round it off, and you're done. And so the air riveter, it works, you engage it first so you can hold the trigger down, and then you can engage it, and then you vary how hard it hits with the dial. It doesn't hit as hard as an air hammer, and I have a couple of different air hammers, so if that doesn't go hard enough, then we'll use, this was a relatively inexpensive Campbell Housefield one, so I've got one of those, and I've also got a big Ingersoll Rand that'll out-whack anything this can give me. So I got a couple of different options for air hammers to try. One tool, I'm pretty sure that's going to work, and a die to do a little sanding on, and then we're going to see if this all works.
So I'm going to clamp all this down to my welding table because it's more convenient for me, but if all you have is some C-clamps, that will also work.
All right, so we'll give it a go with the riveter. I just tried it out. It does work. So with the riveter, you hold the trigger, and then you push it to trigger it. Don't do this by hand. Okay, so I'm just changing the tool up from this sort of rounded over bullnose tool that, you know, basically got me started pretty easily to something that's a little flatter. I'm just noting that I've got some detail down in here I can't pick up. I should be able to get it either like that or like this. And then I also need a bunch of stretch over here at the far end. Okay, that's got to be down flat, so I've got to stretch that around, and the round tool is not going to get it done. The flat tool should get that done. Okay, so back we go. The air riveter seems to be working just fine for this material. In fact, I'm not even hitting it as hard as it'll go, and it's a lot more comfortable to use. And I bought this used, clearly off of eBay. It's an Ingersoll Rand. No, it's an Atlas Copco. That's what it is, and it's a 6. So that's the size of the riveter. Clearly 6P. It's been heavily used, but boy, is it ever good. So, good tools. You only get them, need to buy them once, but it's working out really well, and you can hold it. Like, you can literally get down and bear on it while you're doing this. I don't think I could hand hold an air chisel. Okay, so back we go. More noise.
So I've left a lot of that footage in for doing this just to show you that it didn't actually take that long to get this sort of gross development of the shape in there. But once you start working on the details, it does take quite a bit longer. And the stainless is fighting back. Like even with that harder edge tool, I'm not able to get it to pick up the detail in the corner until the point that it literally broke. And then I switched tools and I did a little bit of learning on this one.
All right, so you saw that my tool broke off, and again, this is just a test piece, so we're going to just see what it is that we can do here. And I'm finding a few little issues. One of them that's kind of interesting. I mean, things are getting hot, obviously. I only welded this on this side, so I'll have to just get some weld on the inside of the socket. We'll fix that right up. I made this tool a million years ago, this tool, to do stainless steel headers. So I thought, well, I'll go in and hit it, and I turned it down as light as it'll go, and it hits it really hard. So I think that's mangled that part. So there's no recovering the piece, but whatever, in the interest of learning. And the other thing is, things are getting bouncy. Like as the stainless steel is coming down and things are tightening up, then here, I'll just give you a quick demo of what I mean. So I had my hammer out, and I was just trying to stretch, you know, just treat the die like a dolly is what you're doing. But can you see? That's just the stainless steel bounce. It needs quite a bit more, but it's fighting, like it's fighting back. I can't get this part to move. That's way harder than I should be hitting that. So it's pretty tough up there. So I'm thinking like maybe we'll call this done. I'm gonna have to move to steel. I think with steel dies I'll have a little better chance of getting this little absorption problem taken care of, and then we should be able to replicate the part. But in the meantime, let's whip this thing out of here, give you the last look. I'm a little afraid to look at that. They don't fake it here, folks. You try something, you experiment. If it doesn't work, go back and try some more. I could probably dolly that out. It's not too bad. It's for sure a little, I mean, it hasn't even hurt the die, which is incredible. Like, that's still all there. So no appreciable marks on this at all. The rest of this, I think, with a little bit of careful work, again, I wasn't finished before the end of everything broke off. And remembering we only need like this little bit. We don't need all of this. It's somewhere around there. See how much more work you actually have to do. How much? How much? You get a good look. I mean, this upper surface here is not too bad. A little ding there and there and there. I mean, you can just easily come in very, very carefully and just dolly that down. Okay, so that's just too much. But I now know that this is going to be difficult to do, so I may want to create the same sort of deal as this, but out of the Delrin. So I might sharpen, because there's no way for this tool to get in there, and then the one that went flying off in all directions, it's still warm, like it's 5 minutes later. This can kind of get in there, but not really. So I sort of need something like that. Right, but made out of Delrin so that I don't end up with it looking like I need to put it in an English wheel. In terms of straight, like things are really good there. Things are looking really good. So I'm happy enough with it. Again, without the scrappiness back here, which was always going to happen, I think the part would look really nice. Okay, so as promised, I did go in and dolly the trim out, even the end where I committed atrocities down here. just a T-stake dolly, and I've got a hammer that actually will do this trick. So I went in and just dollied it back out. So that's actually looking pretty good. Again, for those that thought I didn't just file that out. There's no way. So check the backside of your work, right? And nice and smooth on the backside. And then it finished up actually pretty good on the front side. Now, there were lots of problems in the doing. And I know this was just a test blank, so it's a little bit short. But the wood was just not providing a hard enough surface to hit against for the stainless steel to make it move. In the next video, we're going to remake these dies using steel, and we're going to see if that works any better. I hope it does. Even if it didn't, the wood was fine. Okay, so nothing wrong with doing that on wood. We were able to create a part that will polish beautifully. Again, this is not going to be the final piece. We're going to just do it all again, and we'll do it one more time, make sure we can get this to work just right. But, you know, I think you can see the quality of the part that's coming off here. And it's the changing of the radius, like for anyone who's wondering, it's the changing of the radius. So it's got a really big radius here that rolls over into the front, and then it goes to a much smaller radius at the back. There's no other way to create such a thing by hand. I have no idea how you do it in a bead roller because you only have a single radius. You drive yourself crazy trying to make it that way. But I'm pretty satisfied with the look so far, and we'll get it perfect, no worries. But this is the kind of job that, hey, it's going to take a week or two to do. It's probably, in my case, going to involve a little bit of CAD work and contacting the local plasma table and getting a few parts cut. It's not going to be efficient for me to try to make this all out of steel by myself. It just will take way too much time. So we'll try to throw some resources at it and make it work. And I know I'm spending more money to make this stainless steel custom part than I could buy the aluminum part that Volvo will still sell me. 100% fully aware. I understand that. But again, when you're trying to achieve things at a higher level, you're going to have to, you have to pick up your game. So doing the best we can. Anyway, so that's a wrap for this episode. Thanks for coming along on the adventure. I do appreciate the, like, subscribe, make the algorithm happy. Please, please. I don't beg. Do it whatever you like. But hey, tell a friend. We're going to continue on with this, and then we've got a couple other stupid projects to go, and I'm still waiting for parts. I think everyone in Carland right now is waiting on parts. I'm really glad I don't need an ECU just yet. It would be even worse. So we'll catch you on the next one. Keep your stick on the ice.